Okay, so welcome everyone. Just adjusting my, okay, just adjusting my lens. You may, if you're watching, and you can watch, by the way, through today's practice, if eyes open feels better to you, that's always an option when we're sitting, but in particular today, because we're going to be playing with change and with flow a little bit in our meditation practice or in our experience of the world. So eyes open might be a thing. And I was going to say, if you're seeing me, you may actually see over my shoulder one of my dogs pop up. His face will pop up in the window from time to time. And that's actually, if that happens, that's a kind of a cool thing to have your attention kind of bounce off of and deal with as we're practicing. But actually, to start, what I was going to say is let's actually start with, and this is going to sound, I said we're sitting today, but let's start with a little bit of movement. What that movement is going to depend. So just as a way of arriving, I'd like you to just give yourself a moment. Don't try to organize your body in a particular way. Don't worry about sitting in, meditation position, whatever you imagine that might be. Instead, just kind of take a few easy breaths without trying to control anything, and just notice what your body feels like it might need in terms of movement. So I'm going to suggest, although I don't think this is going to translate into the camera, but you'll get kind of a side angle. I'm going to go into a low lunge. Yeah, you're just getting my chest. So I've dropped down onto my right knee. You might be operating through your shoulders, rolling your shoulders out, or just taking your arms up over your head, or whatever it is. For me, because we're sitting for 15, 20, 25 minutes, I like to open the hips up. And a low lunge is a great way to do that. So stacking if you're moving into a little lunge, doesn't matter what foot is forward, but just stacking the knee over top of the heel roughly, okay? And then if you're sort of slouching out into that hip, like if your bum is kind of coming out to the side, then can you bring it back into line so it feels like both hips are even in space? And you may even want to work the back knee back in space a little bit. Okay? Breathe there. And you can, if you want, actually work in a few actions. So I'm rotating my shoulder, just some nice lazy shoulder circles here. Again, you might be gently circling your neck. You might be circling your wrists. Just looking for tension and just easing it out. And now I'm going to switch legs. So if you were lunging, maybe you're lunging in the other direction now. It's going to leave a little bit of left to desire in terms of the effectiveness of this for people who are watching later, so I apologize to you late joiners or much later joiners. Just finding that lunge. I have to admit, this is showing my yoga bias. People that I've noticed that come out of a Buddhist meditation tradition, they just plunk themselves down and often begin sitting, which I've kind of never gotten. I like to get us eased into our body in a way that is comfortable so that we don't feel like it's agony to sit. Okay. Good. Now, finding whatever position feels natural and normal. I'm gonna, just to set us up, by way of setting us up, a few words about what today is about. I mentioned in the reminder email that we've been kind of playing with the feels and really working with relaxation and different forms of attention. We did an open awareness practice a few weeks ago that was maybe a little bit more out there than some people might have been used to, or a completely new practice, and that's all good. So if you're like, what was that? Today it's going to be a little bit different. We're switching the channel. So I call this practice mind the gap. So if in your mind's eye, if this works for you as an analogy, I think about, like, remember when we used to get on things like the TTC before social isolation, or at least I haven't been on the subway since COVID really hit in March. And there's always that little gap. Okay, so one moment you're on the platform, and the next moment you're in the car. Assuming that the doors are open and it's your turn. But in between that moment on the platform and then the moment in the car, we've got the gap. Okay, and so the practice is really is minding the gap in the sense of not stepping into danger. No real danger for us here in terms of our sit, but there's still lots of gaps, lots of moments where we're moving from one state of being to another, or our attention is changing in a way from one thing to another. And so what our meditation is about today is really about an exploration of change, of impermanence, which is, the cliche is death and taxes are the inevitable things in life. Forget about all that. The Buddhists had it figured out way before that. Impermanence is definitely the fact of life. We often want to hold on to the things that we don't want to let go of. I can't bear to let this person or this experience or this feeling go. Or we're pushing experiences away. Like, too much of that feels lousy, or I don't like that. Our judging mind gets all sped up. So we're not actually going to deal with the experience of change from a judgy standpoint. So if you notice that your mind gets into judging, that's okay. Just be with that, but know that we can kind of just let that go and try to bring it back to just observation. And whatever age you're, I know we've got a few kiddos with us today. So this works if you're 4, this works if you're 104. It's really just about getting curious and us paying attention to what's happening right here, right now. Okay? I'm cutting out now. How about now? Am I still there? Okay, cool. If I do cut out, if I'm gone for more than say 20 seconds, someone please holler at me or try to get my attention, and I'll try to reset things. If it's less than that, it's probably no more than the little hiccup or gap in our thoughts or in our attention when we're meditating. So don't worry too much about it. But thank you for letting me know. It could be that, yeah. So if we cut out, just keep doing what you're doing and pick it up when your connection reestablishes. And I should say too, before I continue with our kind of rationale for what we're about today, if minding the gap doesn't work for you, just sit. Just sit however you sit, okay? And that's cool. That's awesome. Okay, so in terms of the gap, moving from one state to another or noticing changes. Really what we're playing with here is the idea of pausing and noticing transition. So noticing where things end and then the pause in between, and then where they begin again, where we pick them back up. And if that seems a bit vague, don't worry, I'll guide you through momentarily. We'll give you some concrete examples for trying that out. One reason I really dig this way of practicing is that it's not maybe quite so airy-fairy highfalutin as an open awareness practice. It's direct, sort of more concentrative, and anytime we're dealing with observation, we're noticing. So this is a super life skill. Wisdom is found here, really, truly, not knowledge, not intelligence, but wisdom, and I think that's the most powerful thing. Because when we can see things clearly, when we can notice those starts and stops and pauses, and we can, rather than reacting to things and constantly being sped up, we have a chance to sort of pause and take it in, and then be a little bit more selective, a little bit more skillful, the meditation speak, about how we're going to operate, how we're going to respond to it, whatever it is. So there's my preamble. Let's get your body organized now. So let's find a comfortable position that you can sit comfortably. I'm actually sitting on a bench as I sit, so I've just got you may not see it in frame here, but my hands are resting on my knees. Eyes can be open, eyes can be closed, or you can kind of pick in between and just gently turn them down and let them sort of drop a heart focus. Just get really sort of fuzzy. So in my own practice, I think of these first few moments as being the on-ramp into the meditation. So here we are, we're entering, sort of like getting on the meditation highway, if you will. The race car of consciousness. Only we don't have to race, because consciousness is there all the time. We're here. Okay, we're here until we're not, until we're sleeping or we're somewhere else. Okay, so let's just begin by focusing on one object. So our focus here is going to be fairly narrow. And if you don't like the word focus, if that feels too much like you're sitting in a classroom or something, or it sounds too much like work, just think of it as paying attention. So that might be paying attention, sort of locking your eyes on a particular spot. Could be tuning into a sound or a series of sounds in your environment. I start there because often feelings in our bodies, including the feeling of breath, can be maybe not so great. It doesn't feel like a spot you want to hang out. So if that's the case, starting with casting your attention externally, taking in something external, and then trying to keep that tight focus. So for me, my eyes are open, and I'm looking directly across the street at the green sign. And there is so much going on. The wind is actually beginning to rain, more raindrops. So I'm aware of other things, but maybe not picking them up. So paying attention to that green sign, or paying attention to your breath, or whatever it is, whatever object you picked up. We're not shutting all the other channels down. In fact, we're not really worried too much about all the other stuff that's happening. Just easing into the feeling of non-effort as you allow your body to rest in that focus. We're going to just stay with that for the next few minutes. Now you may notice distraction. Okay, you may get lost in thought, or you may be trying to look at the equivalent of whatever your green sign is, and then get a blast of sound, or a ray of light, or an itch under one knee, whatever it is. Or maybe it's a nice feeling like that, just a sort of settling calm, whatever it is. That might bring you out of that narrow focus. And that's okay. Just notice I'm not going to say if it happens, because it will almost certainly happen. The play here is just to treat this like, yep, totally knew that that was going to happen. It's all good. I don't need to do anything with that or about that. I can just be looking at what I'm looking at, or feeling at what I'm feeling at. I'm going to leave you in silence for a few minutes just to be here. We'll think of this as being sort of landing number one for our meditation. Don't worry too much about changes and gaps and all that other stuff I talked about. We'll get there. Just stay with your object. Stay with that directed attention. Allowing yourself to drop in here, but not to space out. So remember, this is an observation-based meditation, so this helps. It's almost like you're a reporter, crime scene reporter. And the scene of the crime, the only crime here is, well, there isn't really. It's just whatever's happening, but you're gonna observe that scene. So if you feel yourself sort of zoning out, and that's a fairly natural progression, at least for me, as my body starts to settle and my attention begins to sort of zoom in to that object of attention. Things can get so restful, almost kind of lackadaisical, where I'm like zoned out or spaced out. So that can feel super nice, and that actually might even be what you're after on a particular day. For today, notice that kind of spaciness, or you've lost the reporter's curiosity. Just trying to dial back into it, but not with any urgency, not with any effort. Instead, just with kind of a patience. Oh yeah, right. Where I am sitting, it's begun to rain. And that's only noteworthy because it completely dovetails with where I'm going to ask you to go next. Not out into the rain, just to be clear, but to broaden your attention somewhat. So here's what this might be. If you were focused on your breath, say the feeling of the breath at your sternum, or feeling back of your throat, just allow your attention to get a little bit broader, a little bit bigger. When I'm dealing with a sensation-based focus in my body, I like to just broaden things out so that I'm starting to become aware of what's happening more holistically in my whole body, just what's going on. Just holding that attention super gently, just trying to take it in without too much control or illusion of control. Okay, and so play with that over the next few minutes. I'm going to leave you in silence again in a moment. But as we said, because we broadened our attention, here's the purpose. And so for me, my green sign now becomes less of a green sign. It's the house, it's the street, it's the air, it's kind of everything. You don't have to speed out to the ends of your awareness. It could be just like 1 inch more and 1 inch more. But however you are guiding your attention, purpose here is to allow your focus to get big enough that you notice some change, that you notice the impermanence of whatever you're noticing. So this may be something that you can even perceive in a very, very small focus, so even without broadening. And in fact, breath here is a great example. I'm going to cue you through this as we settle into the next stage of our sit. So you may notice the inhale. And then there's a pause, there's a gap before you hit the end of the inhale, and the exhale hasn't begun. And you exhale, and you follow that breath through, and you come right to the end, and you can really sort of drill down. Just feel, sense every aspect of that breath, from beginning to middle to end, and then the pause, then the gap. Beginning, middle, end, mind the gap. Beginning, middle, end. And that might be feelings, and that might be sensations. Could be sounds. I mean, you decide how you're broadening things out. If you get lost in this sort of adventure, then just come back to your original object. Come back to that original point of focus. Steady yourself. And once you've got your legs about you again, you can start surfing, dealing with that change, letting things flow. With this, but I'm going to suggest a tool that might be helpful. So if you find that broadening your awareness out makes things a little bit jumbled, a little bit confusing, maybe a little bit less like a meditation, or just like being in your life, you might try using a noting practice. And noting, super simple, just a gentle internal cue. If your mic is off and you're on your own, you can even say the word just gently out loud to yourself. If that's not the case, or that's not your preference, like I like to do it internally, so it's just in my mind. I'm distracted by something, I just apply the word that describes not actually the content of the distraction, but how I've interacted with it. So right now, my initial focus was that green sign. I saw a flash of lightning. I was going to say scene, and then there was the crack of thunder. The note is hearing. The wind buffets my face. The note is feeling. It could be thinking, it could be itching, it could be planning, or criticizing, or whatever is happening. Just kind of pop a flag down, a little note flag. Oh yeah, that was it.
then return to the meditation. And then when you left the meditation, return to the focus of your practice. Probably hear the rain. You can hear my voice really coming down. Talk about a metaphor for practice and for our attention. All the time. All the time for practice. Mentally. Albeit not normally with tail. Storm or no storm, notice how you're feeling. And noticing what's happening, how things are changing. My green sign is still there like a beacon. The rain, which was furious a moment ago with hail, is getting calm. And I find the gap. Rather than rushing into worrying about what happens next or what this all means or really about any of it, I just notice. Oh yeah, it's speeding up. It's playing out. There's the gap. Before I pick up whatever grabs my attention next, I just notice that transition. I notice the change. Just notice what's going on. Pause. Find your gap. Begin again. It may be helpful here to notice the direction of your attention. Does it feel like your attention is reaching out the world or in your body? Or does it feel like things are reaching out to grab your attention? There's a little play here with the direction for attention. up the direction from a moment ago about the direction of the direction. Noticing whether your attention is reaching out or whether it's being pulled toward something. It was hard for me when the rain really picked up not to have my full attention pulled away from where I was and instead into everything else. Here's a simple question that is actually, I say simple, but kind of tricky. Where's the feeling of you in all of this? So if your attention is coming out, and I tap my own forehead here because it often feels like we exist behind our eyes, behind the bridge of our nose. There's a gap there too. And notice the gap that exists between the feeling of you and the experience of your breath or the sign or the local world. Mind that gap. Sometimes the gap between us and what we're experiencing can feel really big. Sometimes it can feel like there's no gap at all, that we are continuous with our experience of the world. All experiences are acceptable, are possible. Final couple of breaths. Notice how things have changed in your physical body over the last not quite half an hour. Notice changes that may have existed in how your mind was then and now. Maybe a little bit slowed down at the pause of the observation. Maybe still sped up. Or maybe something different. But just notice. Okay, final thought is a little gratitude. So thank yourself for making the time to show up today. Literally to show up, to try, to practice. To just to take the time for yourself and to be here in our online community with others. That's something to be thankful for. And the ability to do what we just did, to hold your attention, and train it, and play with it. Something that we get, and we can take it for granted. It's pretty big. And I'm going to use that little honk I got from my neighbor, I think not directed at me, as our cue to wrap up. So there it is, everyone. Final thought, you can let the room come back in, let your body move, let that go, shake it out. Taylor Swift's meditation. No, actually, final thought is a little bit of homework, optional homework, no marks awarded, just an opportunity to take it out off of the cushion or off of your seat and into your life. You can do this all day, every day. This is kind of a really an awesome practice. I said at the beginning because there really is wisdom in it, because it just makes sense. If you're like this, if this is your world, it can't help but be narrow. And if your world is this, and you're aware of all the gaps and all the changes and everything that happens, you can't help but acquire wisdom because you're learning, you're seeing. So how does this play out in terms of the homework? If you don't notice, if you forget about doing this, I actually set a timer. So I'll set it just for random times, 20 minutes, an hour and a half, 3 hours, or 2 minutes. And when the timer goes off, I pause. I observe. I notice with what just ended. I mind the gap. and I pick up for whatever happens next. There it is. You can give it a try and report back in a subsequent week. Yeah, that's it. That's it for me. Thank you all for coming. Are there questions, comments? Oh, Deborah, I really appreciate the fact that you still talked into your elbow even though we're across the screen. How polite. No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm actually going to just, for those of you that are watching this after the fact, be well.